Hi, everyone. I'm Paul with MadCap Software, and I'm going to talk to you today about responsive layouts in MadCap Flare. So this is all about trying to make your content look good on all devices. So large screen, medium-sized screen, tablet, iPad, small screen, smartphone. You want your content to look as good on the big screen as it does on the smaller screen. So responsive layouts in MadCap Flare is all a part of responsive web design. So there are different parts to this. There are skins. So if you are generating HTML5 top navigation or side navigation output, you've seen this already, where you have the navigation shown either at the top or on the sides. And then when the window gets smaller, when you view it on other devices, that navigation now is in a flyout. So you have what we call hamburger button. And so it looks like a little hamburger up in the corner, and you click that and you get the flyout. So that is responsive output in a skin, and that's just built in. That just comes with it out of the box. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is responsive content. So in addition to that outside of your output, the skin, you also want your content to look good on the different devices. And that might involve different things. And one of those things is responsive layout. And responsive layout, it's all about structuring your content. It's the structure of it so that it looks good on the different devices. All right. Now, before you watch the rest of this video, I would highly, highly encourage you to have already watched the videos that I did in the styles series, the ones specifically about selectors, and the other video about media queries. Because I am going to be going into those areas. In fact, if it were me, I probably would just watch the entire styles series, all those videos, so that I'm kind of up to speed if I don't feel overly confident with styles yet. Because this responsive layout thing, it works hand in hand with your styles. That's really what you're doing, is you're changing your style sheet. You're just kind of doing it in a different way in Flare. And you need to understand a little bit about what are called complex selectors. And you also need to know about media queries. So from this point on, I'm just going to assume that you have at least a basic knowledge of those things so that I'm not re-explaining it all throughout this video. All right. So what I'm going to cover in this video, I'm going to begin by explaining the system that Flare uses for its responsive layouts. And it's a 12-column grid system. So I'll explain it in the next section. So you just need to have this understanding of how it works, of the whole idea behind it. And then once you kind of get this 12-column thing straight in your head, it makes sense. And then I am also going to talk about these responsive layouts and how it integrates with the media queries that I just mentioned a little bit ago. And I'm going to get into responsive layout styles, because when you are making these changes, the style sheet's changing, and we want to look at your style sheet and see how you can go in and make further changes in your style sheet to these things if you need to. So then I'm actually going to get in and we'll go through the steps. We'll create responsive layouts and we'll look at editing them. And then I'll finish up by just a few miscellaneous things to consider. And we're really talking about, of course, online output here. That's what this is intended for. And specifically HTML5 outputs. You can also do it in clean XHTML. What I'm going to be showing you in this video is really HTML5. And in fact, when you create a new project, when you go through the Start New Project wizard in Flare, there are the factory templates. And as is the case with other videos I've done, there are this particular feature is highlighted in a couple of those project templates, our e-learning project templates. And so I'm actually going to open up that one of those projects, and we're going to look at that as an example. And I'll also show you examples from the Flare online help, and we'll do that right away so that you have an understanding of what responsive layouts are and how they look in the output, what they're doing. All right, that's what I'm going to cover in this video. Let's just go ahead and get started. So let's talk about this system that Flare uses to create these responsive layouts. And let's begin actually by looking at some outputs so that you see what the intention is here. So first of all, you're looking at the homepage for Flare's online help system. And if you come down a little bit, you can see right on this page, I have a responsive layout. You see these two sections, one technical communication, the other learning and development, and real light you see this background on each one. So these are these rectangles, and they have different content in them, right? These lists and these small images that are hyperlinked. And this is a responsive layout. So I have text, I have content side by side. And the idea here is that if I were to, you can replicate what things would look like on an iPad or an iPhone, a smartphone, if you just resize the screen. And as I get down lower and lower, you can see now tablet is kicked in because there's that hamburger menu that I talked about. And these still look the same. They're just kind of closing in on each other. So it's still this structure of one of these are, I refer to these as tiles, all right? Because that's just kind of what they look like, these two tiles or cells. And so they're just side by side here. And as I get smaller, the content just gets more and more scrunched until I get down to a mobile size, right? And so now they flip on top, one on top of the other, these two tiles or these two cells, so that it's easier for people to see on an iPhone, because otherwise the content would just get too scrunched. And you can also see this in different places in the help. I'm just going to look for something here, add variable set. I think I've got one in there. Yeah. So that first one that you saw was kind of decorative on that first page. And so I had the background on there, and it was sort of a one-off. But this particular structure in here, I use time and time again to show content. And this is in search results. So this is micro content. And you're seeing two cells here, two tiles or cells. And so this is one right here where I've got this truncated set of steps. And then over on the right next to it is an animated GIF that's just running. And I could open up the full topic, and it's basically the same thing in here, except for there's more steps shown now that it's the full topic. But that's what it is. So this is a very simple structure. One tile, two tiles, one cell, two cells right there. And then of course, when you shrink it down, there's not enough space there to show both of it comfortably. So you got your steps, and then you got your animated GIF at the bottom. And then in that e-learning project that I talked about that we're going to use as an example, you get into one of these content pages and you see this definitely looks like two tiles, these blocks with the blue background. So we've got some text on this side and an image on that side. And if you reduce the size in this, you see that, all right, it changes. So those are responsive layouts. So how does this work? What's the system? What's the system that I'm talking about? Well, it's this 12 grid system. All right, well, what's that mean? Well, you have to imagine a row of just a row in your Flare project, in a topic or in a snippet. And that row is sort of like a table, but not really. And you imagine 12 columns in it, right? And the 12 columns, it always equals one. You got 12 columns in there, that's 100%. That's all the space. So if you can add numbers to get 12, you can do this. So math is not my strong suit, but I can add up to 12. I can do that. I managed to get through school and know how to do that. So if you don't want 12 cells, you don't need to use all 12 of those columns, right? You might decide, well, I just want two, like you just saw in both of those examples, actually. And so instead of 12, you would have two cells, and each of them, though, is taking up enough space to add up to 12. So it would be 6 and 6. Whereas if you actually did have 12 columns in there, it would be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, all the way up to 12. Each one would be taking up that space. And it's just how Flare uses that numerical system to calculate the percentage. So if I've got two columns, it's 6 and 6 adds up to 12. Well, it's 50%, 50%. If I had three columns, what is that? 4, 4, 4, if they're all equal. All right, 4, 4, 4. So each one is 33.33333%. Four columns would be 3, 3, 3, 3. And then that would be 25%, 25%. And they don't have to all be equal. So for example, I've got some structures in my documentation that's 8, 4, right? And so, or 4, 8. So you can, depends on how much space you need for something, but those numbers will add up to 12. All right. So that's pretty simple. And it's actually based on this system that already existed called Foundation, Zerb Foundation. All right. And actually, if you were to go into Windows where you installed Flare, and if you knew where to look, you would see this Zerb Foundation CSS file in there, which was added in order to help make this work. Okay, so now that you understand this idea of these invisible columns, which they don't always have to be invisible. In my case, in this e-learning project, I added background so you can actually physically see them. But if you don't, they're just invisible columns, adds up to 12. All right. That's what you need to understand, first of all. Now, I'm going to go in the next section, I'm going to talk about how this system works with media queries. And we're going to get into Flare and start looking at how this kind of gets put together. Now let's go into Flare and let's take a look at the UI that is involved with this and how it works with media queries. Okay, so this is one of those e-learning project templates that I was talking about. And if you open in the Content Explorer, you go down, there's this topic called 2 tiles. Just named it simply to reflect what's going on in here to highlight this feature, okay? And if you look down below this initial text, you see these 2 same tiles in here. And so that is a responsive layout. Now, the UI that's used to create these is found in the home ribbon, and you just come over and select responsive layout. And it opens up this window pane right here. And this is allowing you to create this thing right here. And if I click inside one of these columns, one of these cells in here, you are going to see the structure bars over on the left change so that it's a series of cells in here. You've got div on the very outside, and then you get some other divs in here, and the content inside, in this case, has some paragraph tags and a list tag. All right. So whatever I'm clicking in a responsive layout, once I'm in it, I'm clicking in it, is reflected over here in this window pane. And we're going to get into this in more detail soon when we actually go in and create one of these from scratch. And you can see a few things that are going on in here. You can see the name of the style that I've created, that I used, and I call this div.2tiles. That's what it's that's just the name of it in the style sheet. And if you come down and you look and you see cell width, now this is where the numbers come in, the 12, right? So if I click in the first cell, it's 6. If I click on the second one where the image is, it's 6. But I could change these. I could select any number. So if I wanted the one with the image to be wider, I could change that maybe to 7, and I could change this first one to 5, but they still open up, they still add up. All right. And there are other fields in here that that will go through soon when we start creating these. But I want to point out now, not only do you have this main field in here where you're controlling these numbers, but you also have these buttons up here: web, tablet, mobile, for the media queries, to control what it looks like when you have different, when you've got a different size screen in here. And these are based on the settings in your target, where you supply the breakpoints. How wide is a tablet going to be? How wide is the mobile going to be? And most people just kind of keep those. It's pretty standard sizes. So I can select, I can go from web to tablet to mobile to change my design. So in tablet, I changed that. Now look what happened in the editor. It actually, it's synced with these drop downs right here, which change the look, the layout, and the style, the media query that you're seeing. So the editor itself changed to reflect that size. And the numbers in here, 6, and if I scroll over and click in this one, 6, it's the same, because the idea is, all right, I want these two tiles side by side in the wide output and the web output. When I get to tablet, all right, it still is fine to have them side by side. So I'm going to still do 6, 6. But when I get to mobile, well, now the editor changes yet again, and it switched this to mobile, right? And this to multiple, to show you what styles are taking, that are affected by this. Tablet styles and mobile styles are both affected in this. But you can see that I don't have this side by side anymore. If I scroll down, you can see one is on top of the other. And that's because I changed the numbers in here. So when I was in the mobile mode, I changed this to 12. And if I click down next to the image, it's also 12. So it's taking up all the space. So that's how you're able to have the same content, the same cells and everything. And you don't have to make copies, but you're just controlling the structure of it simply by changing the numbers using these media queries. All right, and I just went back to web. You just want to make sure you're on the right thing when you're making your changes. Otherwise, you might be getting something that you don't exactly expect. All right, so that is the layouts with media query integration. In the next section, we're going to get into styles, and we're going to look at how changing this, creating responsive layouts, affects your style sheet. All right, now as you are creating these responsive layouts, you're affecting your style sheet. So let's go back into Flare and look at a little bit of detail for that. So I've got my cursor in this first cell of my responsive layout. And if you look over into the responsive layout window and you go down to the bottom, you can actually see what's happening in the style sheet. And this little checkbox down here lets you auto save your style sheet. It's a good idea to have that selected. Now, what's happening in here based on settings that I made in here, plus settings that I made in the style sheet, what you're seeing here is a width of 48% and a margin left of 0. Okay, so you're thinking, well, I thought you said 6 was 50%. It is. It is. And if I had created this brand new here, it would say 50%. But what happened was when I created this in the project template, I initially did that, and then I went into the style sheet and I adjusted the width just a smidge to 48%. Margin left is this cell offset. So if you want to change the margin left on whatever cell is active in here, you would change this, and it's the same thing, the series of numbers. So if I selected 4, that's like, so 444, that's 33.333 That's how much of a margin you're giving it. The row gutter is, that has to do with padding on each of your cells. And so if I were to put in a row gutter in here of 20 pixels, it would give me 10 pixels padding here on the right side of the first cell and 10 pixels of padding here on the left side of the second cell. And in case, just as a refresher, so that you understand the difference between margins and padding, if you look at this diagram, all right, in the middle, you've got this yellow box that just represents content. So it could be, say, just a word, okay? And outside of the word, so you have this invisible rectangle, which is represented by this teal kind of color here, but you can put a color on it, like teal or like red or blue or orange or whatever you want. And that is your border. Now, the space between the edge of the content and that border, that's padding. All right. So when you change the padding, that's what you're affecting here. This kind of red dashed line on the outside, that represents the margin edge. So the margin is from the border out to that margin edge. So when you're adding the margin, you're increasing the space there. So you might not have a border set on, this rectangle, and you might have both a margin and padding set, and it looks like it's the same thing, but it's really two different things going on there. So just understand what you're changing when you're changing margin and padding. So offset, it's called offset here because it's not the whole margin, it's the left margin. And it's called row gutter here because when you add padding to, the right side of one and the left side of the other, it's supposed to make it look like a gutter. Now I do have this white space in here, but I created that using actually margin, all right, which I didn't set in here. And I did that actually in the style sheet, okay? So if I click on the second cell in here, you can see down here it's 48%. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. There it is, margin left of 4%. So I did that manually later in the style sheet. And the reason why I did that was that I wanted, I of course want to take up all the space, but I wanted to add some extra stuff to the left of this first one because I have the background color on them. So the padding wasn't really going to do what I wanted. I wanted this white strip in the middle. So I used margin in there. And so I did 48% on each of the cells. And then I did 4% margin left on the second cell. And it adds up to 100%. Okay, now you look back over again to the structure bars. So what you've got here are a series of div tags. So you got the outer one, which represents the whole thing, and that is whatever you decide to name it when you create a responsive layout. And I called this one 2 tiles, right? Now you click inside one, and then the structure bars within that are going to show what's there. Well, it's another div within. So that div represents just that first cell. And then of course, the paragraph and, that paragraph, whatever is inside of it. Okay. So, and then if I click over in the second one, you're going to get, again, the outer div 2 tiles, but then you get a different div. And now I've got this paragraph with the image tag in it. All right. Now, this how these are being controlled is with these complex selectors. That's why I wanted you to watch that other video on complex selectors. So when I click in this first cell, you look down and you go, okay, what's the style that's being affected when I click in this? Well, it's div.toTiles, and then you got this greater than sign, and then div nth child 1. All right. So this is a complex selector. It's a direct child complex selector. So what it's saying is, all right, you got this outer div, 2 tiles, and then you got this div that's directly inside of it, and it's the first one within it, That's what the 1 stands for. When that happens, do this stuff. And on the second one, I click in that, it goes, it's the same thing, except for you got the paragraph in here, 2. All right. And so I'm saying when it's the second div within this outer div, do this thing. And if we go to the style sheet, you're actually going to see these things. So let's open up the style sheet and working in advanced view, because you're just not going to be able to do this stuff in the simplified view. And we've got a couple of things in here. You look on the left, and I've got all styles shown in here. So you're seeing everything. You got this div section. And of course, you come down here and you see 2 tiles. That is the main div. That's the class for it. That's what I've created. You also see this other one in here called 2 tiles layout. I honestly don't remember. That might have been one I created initially and then didn't use. I don't remember, but this is the one we're using right here, the 2 tiles. But then you also go up to complex selectors, and there's a whole bunch in here. And you're going to find, you look for the 2 tiles, there it is. So I've got a few different complex selectors in here, a few direct child complex selectors, 2 div, 2 tiles, div. So that's in general, you know, when it's got a div right after it. And then these are specific for the first cell, for the second cell. And you can see over on the right, there are the things that have been changed. Now, when you're using the responsive layout window pane, it's only a few styles that you're really changing in here. There's the cell width, okay, the width right there. And then the cell offset, like I said, that can control your the margin left. But in this case, I did it directly in the style sheet rather than using this cell offset thing. And then you can also affect the padding in here. There is some padding set in here, and that's why you see number right in there. And so there are different things that you can set. And this is where I set the background color on it, on the main divs, because I wanted it to be applied to both the first and the second cells. So I applied it to that one. So that's where the color is coming in. And I actually put in the height in here. Most of the time with the height, I'll just leave it default. I want it to be 100%. But the reason why I actually set specific numbers in here was because I wanted it to look good in that template. And if I open up different media queries in here, side by side, we're running out of space, aren't we? Maybe I'll close this thing. And you can see for the web, I have it set as a height of 425, height of 625 for tablet, height of 500 for mobile. Well, so those are some differences. I just kind of played with the numbers in there. And the reason why I did that is because this is sort of a decorative thing with the blue background. And if I had set it at, kept it at the default where it was just using 100% of the height, this second cell would have been, it wouldn't have been as long. It wouldn't have lined up because it's based on what the content is within it. And so I kind of wanted these to be consistent, look, like they're synchronized in here. But unfortunately, you're sort of guessing with the size. And now I'm at the mobile size, and I do have this extra space in here and down there. And that's sort of hard to do when you're setting an absolute value, because the thing is, it depends on the size of the screen and it's shifting, right? Okay, so that's what we're dealing with what we're talking about with styles. We're talking about more than one style, and we're talking about complex selectors. And if you understand the individual parts, you can go in and make additional changes beyond what you can do just in that responsive layout window pane. And you can make the changes in the different media queries. That's what I wanted to get across in this section. All right, now in the next section, let's actually start putting one of these things together. All right, so I understand that if all this is new to you, your brain might be swimming a little bit with all of that detail so far, but it is important that you understand the basics of it. But it doesn't mean that it has to be hard. I'm going to go in and show you how we can just easily create one of these things. The thing about Flare is one of the real benefits of it is that it is flexible. It allows you to go in and change all kinds of things that you want. You don't have to. You can just create one of these structures very easily. Let's go into Flare and just build one of these. All right, I'm in Flare in this topic, and let's just add another responsive layout on top of this one. To get my cursor down here, press enter, and I'm on just a blank, empty paragraph in here. And let's go open up our responsive layout window pane, and we'll create a brand new one instead of using an existing one. I could select over here. I could choose what I want to use and then start creating things. But so I have these two tiles and 2 tiles layout. But let's create a brand new one with a different structure. You click new style, get this dialog up in here. And so there are some factory templates in here that show you a preview on the right of what's happening if you create one based on one of these. Now, you're not stuck with just this, what you're getting. So this one is 444. And I like to use these numbers too, because it lets me understand, oh, okay, what exactly is the structure, at least on the outer, the widest level, the web output. And so this one is 444, meaning 3 cells, each equal 1, 2, 3, and then you go into mobile and they're stacked. They're all 12, so it's 100% each one of those cells. And then this one is 6, 6, and this one is 8, 4. You get the idea, right? And then it also has my existing ones in here, but previews don't come with the ones that you create. But if I know what this one, or this one are, I could create a brand new I could create a brand new responsive layout based on one of those. So you're basically just looking for what's closest to what you want to do, and you select one of those, and then you're going to change it. So let's say that I want one that has 4 cells across the top, and I want them all to be equal. So I'm going to give this a name up here. I'm going to call it 3, 3, 3, 3. Right? And I'm choosing this one because, well, it's got the most cells. It's got 3 cells. I want 4 cells in mine, but mine are all going to add, this is going to add up to 12, 3, 3, 3, 3. All right. And you choose the style sheet that you want it to go to. I only have one style sheet, but so it's just automatically selected. You click OK. All right. Nothing's happened yet. All I've done is create the new responsive layout style. And because I created it, it just created it, it selects it in here. Now, based on what you have selected in here, the new one that I created or another one that I've created in the past, now I can insert a brand new row. So I just click this and it adds it in here, and I can actually get rid of the empty one. And you can see even though I want it to be 4 cells, it added 3 because that's what I started out with. Right? So I want to add a 4th cell. So there's 1, 2, 3. I click in the last one and I can click add cell, and it's going to add this 4th one. It adds it under here because currently these are all set up to take up all the space. That's what happens when you go beyond the 12. So I'm going to click in the first one. I'm going to change the numbers in here now. Instead of a cell width of 4, I want a cell width of 3. And this one, I want a cell width of 3, and I'm on the web tab right here, right? I'm in web mode. So I'm thinking first about the widest one, and I select 3. And on the last one, I select 3. Okay, so that's basically what I want in here. Now, I also want to change it for tablet and mobile. So I'm going to go to tablet now. And it has the 4 cells in here, but you can see that they still have the old numbers. So I'm going to, so now let's say that for tablet size, do I want all 4 cells next to each other? Well, maybe I do, but maybe I just want 2 cells on one, side by side, and then 2 cells next to each other under that. So I can do that. So let's make the first cell 6. Let's make the second cell, you can see it over here. Let's make that 6. Right? So those are side by side. And now let's make cell 3 6. And let's finally make cell 4 6. Right there. Groovy. We got that. So we got tablet. Now let's go to mobile. Take a look at that. Now these were already set to have a cell width of 12 on the original 3. And that's what we want. I want these cells to take up all the space when it's being looked at on a smartphone. But the cell 4, the default is 1. So I want to change that to 12. And there it is. Okay, so now we've got all that. I'm going to go back to web and see what else we want to change in here. So we've got that. Now look how the text is just butted up against the edge. Well, maybe I do want to add some padding in here. And if I wanted to do that, I could say, give me 20 pixels in here and click off of it. And so now I got a little bit, I got space in there. And so it's added, yeah. So it's just added the padding inside these. All right, and you can see down here, I'm clicked in this 4th cell, so it's got the paragraph 4 in here, and it's telling me, all right, this is 25%. You don't have a margin or anything like that. Let's just start with that. And the other thing that happened was when I first opened this, I didn't have my style sheet open. It opened it automatically kind of behind this because it has to be open because I'm making changes to my style sheet. All right, and let's actually, so you notice that the file itself isn't dirtied. I don't have an asterisk up here because I haven't made changes to other than inserting the responsive layout. And other than that, all I've changed is the style sheet. But let's actually change this. Let's get some content in here, some real content. And I'm just going to borrow stuff that's already in this responsive layout down below. I will select that, and I'm going to get rid of this for now so that we can see what's going on. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do all that list and that text, and let's paste that here. So this isn't really, the content. Some of these are going to be taller than others with the content. And that's okay. I have that all over the place. It's just that in my home topic in Flare, when I showed you this, I sort of planned to have about the same amount of content. And so it came out evenly. But in the other things, the content is not, that is different. There it is. The content is not always equal. Some of it is taller than others. All right. All right, so got that. Did I copy the image? Yes, I did. And let's actually go get some content from another topic in here to fill out this number 4. Let's get these paragraphs in here. This is just for demonstration to show you putting actual content in these and what happens. All right, so there I go. There I've got my content in there, and let's actually generate some output now. So what happens a lot of times is I'll create these, and then I have the content in them and I want to test them. So I'll look at it in the output, and then I might want to make some tweaks. So let's go to that topic now. It's this topic right here. So this is my new responsive layout. Okay, so that was not that hard to create that. And I did it all in the Flare UI in the responsive layout editor and the XML editor without even getting into the style sheet. And you can see those are 4 side by side, and I start reducing this. Okay, now I've got these 2 side by side and these 2 side by side. It's just what I told it to do, and go down to mobile size, and now all are stacked. All right, so that worked. Okay, so that is creating the responsive layout. In the next section, let's make some tweaks to it, and we can go into the style sheet and adjust this some, and we'll see how those changes look in the output. Now we've got our responsive layout. Let's go in and let's actually go into our style sheet and let's make some changes to this bad boy. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my style sheet, and it's already open. So I'm just going to click the tab in here and get to it. And you can see that it already is at in this div section, and it's got tiles 3333 selected in here. That's just what I created. Now, the first thing that I like to do when I open up my style sheet is make my eyes go up to my media queries, because I've been messing with media queries and it's got mobile in here. Well, I don't want to make changes that I'm going to regret later, because I've got this inheritance, things inherit from default or the web on down. So I'm going to open up my web next to that. And let's also open up the tablet. These are the three things that I'm really dealing with in here. So I've got default and mobile's right there. I can actually, if I wanted to, get them all in a row like that. So I've got default, tablet, mobile. So I'm big, medium, small. All right. Now, what do I want to change? So in here, let's say down here, I've got these background colors on this. Let's say that I want a background color too, which I can't change in my responsive layout window pane. So maybe I want the background the same on all of these. So in my style sheet, I could set it there, or I could come up here to complex selectors. This is what I probably would do. Come in to, there's my 3333, and you can see all the styles. There's the kind of the generic, the first div that it comes to, regardless of whether it's the first one, second one, third one, or fourth one. And then each one of these is specific to those cells. So maybe I just put my background color on this, and I've got it to set show, to show the properties that are already set in this, as opposed to showing all the properties or whatever. And so I get this nifty add property button in here, and I could just type in background color, or I could come in here if I'm not sure how it's spelled, which is just background dash color, right? And I can choose something in here, click that, and let's go in here and let's pick something that's kind of light. Let's pick that Alice blue, because it's at the very top in there. Well, maybe something a little, there we go. Antique white, that sort of yellowish kind of thing. That'll stick out. We'll click that. And so it just inherits all the way down the line. So it's going to work both in all three, in the web, tablet, and mobile. So I come back into my topic, and there it is. And you go, all right, I've got my background color, and we can preview it, or we can generate the output. I like to generate the output with things like this, because then I can resize it better. I just like to generate it if it's not, it doesn't take too long, and look at it and resize if I need to see what's going on. You go, okay, well, it did what I told it to. Got these four in here. And before I had the background color, these sort of did look like gutters because there was space between them. But now it's just sort of all blended in, and you're going, oh, I don't know if I like that. It is nice that the height on it is 100%, because it exactly gets the content in there, and that adjusts as I change things. So maybe you wanted to put an exact height on it, maybe you don't. But let's actually go in and make changes. Let's make some changes to the margin and the width, so that we actually do maybe get some white space between these, sort of like what I did down here. Okay, so back in the project. So what do we want to do? You just kind of have to ask yourself, actually, let's do something else. Let's add separate background colors to each of these first. All right, just to show you that you can affect each one of these individually. And I can go in here and set the background color for, well, the first one, let's just, we'll keep it at, using that one, that main one that we set on the main one. But the second one, let's go in and let's choose something different. All right. And let's choose, well, let's just choose that aquamarine. Okay. And then the third cell, we'll add even something different. This is probably going to look like the partridge family when I'm done with this. And let's find something kind of unique in here. Well, this one's different, cyan. And then the fourth one. All right, let's do something there too. Background color. And what do we want for this one? Let's go down and let's, oh gosh, let's do it kind of that pink. All right. So we've got 4 different ones in there. Come in here. Yep. So yeah, partridge family all the way. All right. So we still kind of want to get that white in between there. So how would you do that? Well, I probably want to think about, all right, I want to have do the same thing I did in the original one. I might want this. I want to change the width of these so that they're equal still, and then use that extra space to do margin left on the second one. So, all right, we're on the default, the big size, and remember it's 4 cells right next to each other. So the first thing that I want to do, maybe I want the, let's just go with the width of that white strip is going to be 4 pixels. All right, so I'm going to reduce each one of these by, or actually let's make this 23%. And this one, well, actually, I could just go up here and change it there on the width. So each one of those, yeah, I could change it there, but yeah, let's go ahead and change it in here to keep control of each one of these individually in case we want to make other changes later. All right, 23, 23, 23. All right, so I've taken out, what, 8 pixels. And so maybe I want this one right here, I want to get a margin left in there of, I probably needed to take math class for this. Let's do 2 there, and we'll do 2 here and 2 here, and that's only 6%. So it's not going to equal up exactly. And if I wanted to spend more time on this, I would get it out to exactly 100. And but I'm not gonna mess with that. I'm just wanted to show you this. And the margin left, I haven't done it for tablet or mobile. I'm going to save this, go back in here, and so I've got this strip in here. I just wanted to show you how to get this, right? And you can spend time on your own to get the math, to get it to come up exactly 100%. But if I switched it to tablet, I'm not going to get that strip in there because I didn't change that in my style sheet, right? I only changed it on the default media query in there. All right, so now if we build again and view this, you're going to probably be able to see it just a little bit better. But what I'm trying to show here is that once you get the basic responsive layout created and get those settings, you can go into the style sheet and do all kinds of things with this, just depending on what your purpose is, what you want to accomplish. And again, there it is. There's no space in between there, but you can see the 4 cells better. And yeah, so that is editing a responsive layout. And I've just showed you a few things, but maybe those are some of the most common things: background and margins and padding and things like that. Okay, so that's going to do it for editing the responsive layouts. Now we're going to move on to the last section. Just a few things I want to point out before we wrap up the whole video. Okay, just a few other things real quick before we close this out. I'm going to go back into Flare. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video, like I have in other videos that we have, that this particular project is based on one of our e-learning project templates. We have two of them that you can select when you go through the Start New Project wizard. There is the one that's just in the online section, if I can get to it here. Right here, e-learning, that's the one we've been looking at. But I also have this one, e-learning and PDF. The only difference is it's set up for PDF as well as online from the get-go. And what you're going to notice, if you happen to use that project template, it looks just a little bit different. Still have the same content in here, but you're going to notice, oh, what's this purple? So that's a condition. It's set on my responsive layout on that outer div tag. And I've got this one, it's kind of actually blue, kind of looks purple there. And then this red one, and it's set on really the same content down below. Well, I did this because, again, this project is set up for both online and PDF output. And the thing is, the responsive layouts don't work in PDF layout. If you have a responsive layout in a topic and you forget to deal with it and you generate the output, you might end up like with some blank pages in your PDF. And that's because the PDF just can't handle this. So in this case, what I wanted to do was, I'm looking at this going, well, I want to keep this content, this text and this list in here in both the online and the PDF output. And I decided, well, the image I'm just going to keep in the online, but not the PDF. So what I did was I turned this whole section, the content, the paragraphs and the list, into a snippet. So you can see it's actually contained in a snippet here. And I can right click and select open snippet file. There it is. I can right click, and where is it in the Content Explorer? It's right here. Right. It's just, I called that climate, right? So in this topic, I inserted that snippet into the first cell of the responsive layout. Then down below, I just inserted the snippet in an empty paragraph, and I conditioned this. So I've got my conditions. This will look familiar if you've watched other videos on these features where I've got these conditions set up: online only, print only, blue, red. The idea that some is only going to be in online, some is only going to be in print. And so I applied the online only to that div, which is the outer div for the responsive layout. This condition I applied to that second snippet that's just down here by itself. And then in the target, I went in and I told it to include, for this online output, I told it to include the online. There it is, the online. I said include it, and the print only exclude it. And in the PDF, I did the opposite, told it to exclude the online only and include the print only. So just want to bring that up in case you happen to create a project based on this template and you're going, well, why doesn't this look like the other one? That's why, conditions. And you need to keep that in mind when you're creating responsive layouts. The fact that is just not going to work in PDF, so you need to deal with it in a way like this so that you can still use the content, but not get messed up in the output. And there are other output formats in Flare, and you're thinking, well, what if I created output with one of these other online outputs? Well, you know what? Content may or may not show up. You may look at it and go, hey, that kind of works. But the thing is, it's really not designed for those other outputs. And so keep that in mind. So even if you try it, we're not guaranteeing that it'll work anything like what you intended. So it's really for HTML5 and clean XHTML. Now, last thing is, I mentioned earlier on that Flare system in here, we're using this. This is based on Zurb Foundation. That's the system. There are other systems out there for responsive layout. There is Bootstrap is very popular. A lot of people like that. Or Flexbox is super cool. And the thing is, you actually could use those things in a Flare project if you prefer them instead of Foundation. That's fine. The thing is, the XML editor is not designed to show it accurately. But if you can go out and you can bring in CSS files and JavaScript and different files that are associated with those other systems. You can bring them into your Flare project as long as you are using valid markup, your HTML, and valid CSS, these things will work in the output. But just know that when you look at them in the XML editor in this more WYSIWYG view, who knows what you're going to get. But you would have to know what you're doing when you're working with this in markup. But if you are proficient with those things, you could give it a try. I know people who do. All right. But I'm just using, for my own purposes, I'm sticking with what Flare has out of the box, the Zurb foundation system with the responsive layout window pane. Works great for me. And but I wanted to let you know there are other things in case you want to explore them. So responsive layouts, they're pretty cool, right? And the thing is, it's not like you're going to be creating these all the time, every day. What's going to happen is you're going to decide what are the different configurations you need, and you're going to create those, and they're just kind of going to be set. So in my case, I have a handful of these that I use. I have configurations for 6.6 and 8.4 and 4.8 and 3.3.3.3, and I have just a handful that I've done, and they all kind of have similar design. They're set up. Once you get them set up, I use them all the time because I'm always creating new content structures where I want content side by side, but I'm not recreating the wheel each time. I'm just selecting those and putting my content in. All right. So just wanted you to know that even though to get started with these and create them might be a little bit of work, but once you get them done, it's great, right? Okay, so that is going to do it for this video on responsive layouts. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you next time.